Today we're going to be building a WARN 8274 high mount winch. So recently I put on my Instagram story that I was going to be building a couple of my mates a WARN 8274. I've done a few of these in the past and I've also built one on this channel, but this time I was going to focus it around what this costs to do and how much time it takes. So you can see on the back wall here, these are all free spools off 8274s, and that's not even all of them, I don't think. There's 6 of them there. I'm pretty sure I've built about 7 or 8 now. Let's go through what all of this is going to cost you. To start with, you have to have a WARN 8274, obviously. If you got really desperate, you could just buy each individual piece. Like you could go and buy the bottom housing, the top housing, the gearing, and just, you know, slowly build a winch out of just pieces. That would probably cost you a fair bit more than doing it this way. So my mate paid $1,500 for this. They've kind of gone up in price. I know when I got mine, I paid $1,000. I know a couple of people that have paid $500. It varies just depending on, you know, what condition it's in. I've just disassembled it and put it through the King Chrome parts washer. And so all this extra stuff I'm about to talk about, you can pick up from Roadrunner Off-Road. And they were actually kind enough to give me a discount code. So if you are in the market for winch parts or swivel hub parts or anything else that they've got, use code TIMMY5 and you can get 5% off. They have an awesome range. But yeah, let's talk about this winch stuff. So the first thing we've got is the all-bright solenoid. This is a must in my opinion because it means that you don't have to run a solenoid and then have cables coming out through the grill. You can just have it bolted on the end of the motor and have bus bars, and it just makes it super neat. That way you've only got 2 cables going to the winch, the power and the ground. And so that is $178. Then that brings me to the bus bar kit. And so I believe these are made by the High Mount guy. These are available from Roadrunner Off-Road as well. It's just bus bars to go from the different terminals on the motor over to the solenoid. And so they're usually around the $100 to $120 mark. And then to be able to get the solenoid on the end of the motor, there is an extended stud kit. Now the reason you'd buy these and not all thread is because it's actually imperial at one end and then metric at the other end. And so it just makes it a little bit easier to just buy them. They're only 30 bucks for that. And so then you have your choice of motor. You can have a bullet, which is really torquey, but not quite as quick. Then you have the WARN, which is both torquey and quick. You have the bow motors from the GigglePins, or you have the ox motors from RedWinch. It's really up to you. And then you can decide whether you want to get a second-hand one or a new one, or, you know, whatever the case may be. I'm pretty sure Roadrunner offer a bullet, extended studs, bus bar, and solenoid kit all in one for about the $600 mark. In Josh's case, I'm pretty sure he got this second-hand bullet for about $150, or the new WARNs are about $650. It just depends what motor you want to go with, but yeah, you can get away with it for as little as 150 bucks. It also depends what comes on your WARN. For example, when I bought my WARN 8274, it already came with the WARN 6 horsepower motor, so I was really lucky. Then on the end of the motor, I like to delete the free spool, and so this is the one from Roadrunner Off-Road. This is $95 and they look super sleek. Yeah, I really like them, easy to install. They just bolt in the end of the top hat like that. And so then we have the GigglePin Super Shaft. You can either have this or the winch gear one. It doesn't really matter. I believe the Super Shaft is required if you later on want to go to a different ratio. The winch gear one could be compatible too, I'm not quite sure. And so just be mindful when you buy this, you can get it both with and without the large cam gear. And so this one with the large cam gear was $484. So that's quite a pricey upgrade. People that don't want to spend the money could just drill and cap the brake shaft. That is a common mod before these are a thing. But yeah, I like using these and you don't have to do any machining. And then lastly, we have the WARN Complete Rebuild Kit. And so that's essentially all of the seals, bearings, drum bushers, brake pads, and everything else just to freshen up the WARN. And that is valued at about $360. And so you roughly end up spending between that $1,500 to $2,000 mark, depending on what motor and what mods you go with. And then for the old 8274, you're gonna be spending anywhere between $500 to $1,500 in this day and age. And so yeah, this winch is gonna be roughly a $3,000 winch once we're done. I'll put all this aside and I think we'll probably get started by doing the top housing. So the first thing we're going to do is get the new top hat bearings into the top gear set. And so the reason you do this, because from factory, they're only supported by 2 bearings, whereas the replacement kit comes with 3 bearings. Mind you, I very rarely rebuild the top here because they're usually pretty good. But yeah, I thought I'd do this one just so you guys get a complete picture. And so we're just going to knock those down into there. And so now I'm going to tap the 2 more in from the top. And so once those bearings are in there, we're going to put this gear onto this one and then put the circlip around the edge. And so with this top hat kit, you actually get a new shaft to go through the top gear. And from factory, the Warn usually has like a little pinch thing here in the housing where like you knock the shaft in and then you knock a little flathead in to pinch these out. So it grabs the shaft and it can't come back out. But the Roadrunner kit actually comes with these little tabs. So I'm just gonna sit that in there, get this started. And so that's tapped all the way in there, and you can see how it used to get held in there. These little tiny cold chisel things that used to squeeze the shaft. But with the new one, Roadrunner include this little tab, and you drill a little hole here, and then that cap goes over the end instead. Or if you've got the new style, then you get the round one. So I'm gonna drill and tap a little hole here, and this little cap's gonna go on there like that. Put that on there with a little bit of retaining compound. It does actually come with a little Allen head bolt, but I never have much luck with them. They tend to strip out when they're so small. And so I've actually got a little Phillips head that I found in my bolts box. Okay, so we might leave the top hat there for tonight. I don't want to put the free spool delete on just yet because I want to paint this tomorrow when I've got some sun. I might just give these a good spray down and a wipe down so that there's no oily residue on them, and I'll leave that ready to get painted tomorrow in the sun, and then we can bolt the motor on and the free spool delete on. So we'll leave that there for now and we'll move over to the lower housing. I really don't love doing this bit. We're going to get the Giggle Pin Brakeshaft in. So the first thing we're going to do is knock a bearing into the back here, and then we've got to drill and tap 2 small holes here for the retaining plate. The press might have been nicer for that, but anyway, we're there. So yeah, that's knocked just flush with that. And now we're going to do the retaining plate. And as I said, I really don't like doing this bit. So the basic goal of this is this retaining plate is going to be at the back here. And we're gonna have 2 holes drilled, and then we're gonna have a thread tapped in here. And so that's gonna be bolted to there through 2 little holes here and here. And so the first thing we're gonna do that the instructions say is use a 6.5mm drill bit to wedge into these corners. And that's gonna be like our center pop for these 2 holes. And so that is all we're doing, just getting a little center pop there, and that's gonna be the location of our 2 holes. Now, what we've got to do is clamp this plate to the back here. This hole is slightly smaller than this hole. Just try and get a consistent edge all around the inside. So this follows the top of the casing. And so I'll get that all aligned and set up, and I'll give you guys a look at it. And so you can see that's pretty good from that side, and there's a consistent lip all the way around here. And so now I'm going to drill those 2 holes. And so I've tapped the holes into that, and now we're just gonna make these holes a bit bigger for the M3 screws to go through. So they need to be drilled out to about 3.5. All the holes line up okay. And so I'm just gonna put a bit of retaining compound on this as well, along with the bolts, and we'll get these in. Now, it should go without saying that you really don't want those too tight, because they're only M3s and they're only going into aluminium, so it really wouldn't take much to strip them out. Now, usually you'd just be able to buy like a brace off Roadrunner or whatever, but Josh has a really low profile spot to put this, and so we can't really afford having a big bulky brace off the back. And so what I'm gonna do is just drill and tap little aluminium blocks and then weld them to the winch, and then we're just gonna have flat bar going across to the other side, and that's just gonna brace it to stop it from going like that in the bar. And so I've just brought the welder over and we'll TIG these on. And so yeah, that's what I was talking about, essentially just welding a couple of blocks there, and so then I can drill it and tap it and have a bolt in it with a piece of flat bar that goes from this one over to the other side. Like, I don't recommend everyone does it this way. Like, it's probably better if you just buy the kit that Roadrunner sells. I was just a bit worried about getting a brace on the back in his car because he's got a mill weld bar and they're really low profile. And you can see here, that's the back of the winch. And you can see by having flat bar here and here, you're not going any further back than the back of the drum. But yeah, let's call it a night. It is super late and I'll catch you guys first thing in the morning. So I'm back here this morning. I've just bolted it onto 2 fair leads and squared it up with the drum to make sure that that all spins happy and freely. I've just marked where the tabs are going to go on this side in order to bolt the flat bar to. As you can imagine, if it pulls through the back of the drum, these are going to want to be pressing together like that. And so this is just to stop that flex. I'm going to drill these and then tap them, and then weld 2 tabs here, drill those, tap them, and then it'll just be a matter of having a little bit of flat bar across there. So now I've got my marks on here. I'm going to cut up some more aluminium blocks and TIG it to these 2. Now, I'm not claiming to be the most amazing aluminium welder. I just sort of do enough to get by. Something Paulie taught me when you're TIG welding to not use like abrasive discs, instead use like a die grinder, because it's metal on metal and it can't deposit any fiber out of the pad into it. But yeah, I'm about to just TIG on these little blocks here. Going to disassemble it and give it a little bit of a clean up, and then let's get outside and paint it. This color always comes up really, really nice. I'll leave that out in the sun for a while. This stuff dries pretty quick. I think it's like a fast drying enamel. And in the meantime, I'll give the shed a good clean up. So first things first, we're going to turn this over and we're going to get this bush knocked in. And so you want this knocked in until it's flush with the back. And so now, remembering we've put a little bit of grease in this bearing down here, we're going to start getting stuff in here. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is this new card that usually comes with your upgraded brake shaft. That goes in there with the dents facing down and the dimples facing up. Main gear, nose facing up, all the way down, out of the way. And make sure this big hole's lined up there so you can get the brake through it. Intermediate gear, nose facing up. We're going to hold him there. And then you want the circlip that comes with the brake shaft down the bottom, ready for the brake shaft to go through it. And then this ring with the step in it underneath it. And then it's just a matter of dropping our new brake shaft down through the whole lot. And you'll feel that mesh up with the intermediate gear. And you also should feel it go into the end of the drum. Now we're just going to arrange everything in here so it all comes through. And once you have enough room to get the circlip on, we'll get the circlip on. I hope you can see that. Sorry, it's a bit awkward. And so that's all in there for now. That's happy. We're going to leave all that and I'm going to do the brake. I've just taken this bronze ring out of the freezer and that's going to slip around the brake like that and into the housing. These are really, really tight. And so it's going to need a fair old whack to get in there. I'm just going to use the old bronze bush to tap the new one in there. And so once we get it down that far, we're just going to go to a drift. And so I've got this in a fair way now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the thickness of the seal. It's about 4.6. And then I'll see how far down we are. Yeah, we're about 5. So that's pretty much perfect. So I've just put a little bit of grease around that and we're going to knock that in behind it. But first, what you can do is you can grab the bottom spline and rotate this like that. You'll see it right up like that. And so now this is taller and it's going to be easier to get this seal around that. And so I like to use a little pick for this. So that's all in there. The next thing we're going to do is get the brake pawl on. Now the reason you don't do the brake first is because you need to be able to rotate this to preload it, and once the brake's in the way, then you can't do it. Ask me how I know. Now the actual pawl itself is greasable later with a Zerk, but you can't get it into this little section here. And so I'm just going to poke a little bit in there now. Now there's only one spot this can go in, because if you try and put it in a different orientation, it doesn't go all the way down. And so if you keep going around, you'll eventually find the right spot. So there it is there, and that ensures it gets the correct preload. So we're going to wind that up to get preload. And then we get our new brake pads. Then the inner rotor, making sure that you put it in the right orientation. Obviously if you put it on that way, then it's not going to grip on the pawl. So you want it that way. And the next thing, we're going to put the new brake ball bearings in. And so I just chuck like a little bit of grease. You don't want too much because you don't want grease getting all through your friction material. And this is just so they don't roll all over the place while you're trying to load them into the brake. And then we're just going to do a line of them around there. And so then we will chuck the other brake pad on top, making sure that you don't get your greasy mitts all over these, because that's your friction material. And then you chuck your spring in the middle like that. And then you've got this stepped washer that is going to go down, and that's basically your inner bearing. So if you can grab a mate for this, it makes life a lot easier, but you can also use a clamp if you don't have any mates. I might get you to sandwich all this and then I can put it in. So then you got your two little dowels that go in, and then you got the cap on top and the bolt. And so before this bolt goes in, I'm just going to chuck a little bit of Loctite on it. Ooh. And so yeah, that's the bottom half pretty much all assembled, and gotta love that sound. So I reckon the next thing will probably be to get the drum in and the end plate on so it can all sort of sit as one unit while I start building the top hat. What you've got to do is this card here, that's what grabs the drum. This card runs in a channel of the drum, and that's what keeps it all retained in there. And we've also got to line it up with this main gear in here. And then once it's all happy, you push this card down and it locks it in there. So then your quad seal goes in there. And then the last inner bush. And then we're going to drop this in. Yeah, we can like sit it down there. So yeah, that's all on and locked in. You can see when the card is flush with the top of the housing, that's all locked on. And so the only thing that really holds that down is the top hat in a factory setup. The only thing that's stopping this whole shooting match from slipping out the side is this card. That's the only thing that holds the brake. That's the only thing that holds the drum. And that actually happened to Drew up the Cape. And so that's why I like upgrading the brake shafts. But yeah, I think I'm just gonna get this top hat bolted on so we can hold that down and so that this card's not gonna slip out of the way when we're assembling the rest. All right, so we'll put this end plate on. So this also gets a drum bush. Okay, well that's all bolted up and you can see the brace worked out all right. I've never done one like this before, but as I've been saying, Harris has got a really low profile bar, and so I'm hoping that that'll be a bit more sleek than using the ones from Roadrunner. And so yeah, anyway, we'll get this turned around and we'll put in that free spool delete. I actually just realized I wasn't filming, but it's just like a cap that goes on with 4 bolts, and there's a bearing and the free spool gear in there. And so that just bolts to that, and now we're ready to slide the motor in the other side. Watch which way you're threading these in, because these are imperial one end for, you know, British worn, and then they're metric at the other end. So you've just got to watch which way you're putting them in. All right, so that's the motor all home, and we've just got to mount the solenoid on the end of this now. Before you tighten this down, you want the bus bars sitting there happy first, just so you know you can get them on. Whoever built this has tapped a hole in here, tapped a hole in here, tapped a hole for the drain, and then there's a, like, how many breathers do you need? When I make them, usually I just have a drain hole out the bottom, I have a breather in the top that doubles as a fill hole, and that's it. You have to get a whole diff breather set just for the freaking winch breathers, mate. So that is the 8274 built for Harris. It ended up just over $3,000 in total for this entire winch, which is still quite affordable when you put it up against like RedWinches and GigglePins. I know that it's not a brand new winch, but it's gonna behave like one. It's got all new parts, and this is gonna be a really good winch for years to come. And so yeah, I think I started this last night and I finished today. It's early evening the next day, and so it's probably 8 or 10 hours of work, keeping in mind that I did go to a lot of trouble to make this brace low profile instead of just using the off-the-shelf ones. But yeah, once again, if you want to get any of this stuff for yourself, it's all available on Roadrunner Off-Road, and if you want a little bit of a discount, you can put in Timmy5 and you'll get 5% off. Awesome, thanks heaps guys, I'll see you next time.